Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jill Weinstock, and I'm the director of Baxter Street, and I'm excited to provide the introduction to this artist-on-artist conversation between Marina Leybishkis and Nona Faustine discussing Marina's solo exhibition, Archeology of Loss. This conversation will last approximately 45 minutes with the opportunity for a brief Q&A portion at the end. We highly encourage you to use the chat feature to pose questions throughout today's conversation. Marina is a 2020 Workspace resident at Baxter Street, and her exhibition will be on view until July 14th. Marina is a New York-based multimedia interdisciplinary artist who was born and raised in Uzbekistan. She holds a BA in Justice and Humanities Studies from the City University of New York and an MFA from the School of Art at the Institute of Chicago. She was a recipient of the Fulbright Grant for Artistic Research in 2018 through 2019. Through the use of video, photography, archives, archaeology, and text, Marina analyzes the instability of meaning, the construction of visual narratives as locations of self-formation, and the implications of those narratives into perceptions of identity. In her work, the image becomes a fraught site for examining geopolitical concepts of nationality, cultural memory, and the social body. Through her installations, Marina transforms memory into materiality, challenging viewers to inhabit histories in all of their complexity. Archeology of Loss takes the form of an immersive installation incorporating sculpture, video, and sound, and poses crucial questions around history, migration, and image making. Nona Faustine is a native New Yorker and award-winning photographer. Her work focuses on history, identity, and representation, evoking a critical and emotional understanding of the past and proposing a deeper examination of contemporary racial and gender stereotypes. Situated inside a photographic tradition while questioning the culture that breeds that tradition, her practice walks the line between past and the present, beginning where intersection identities meet history. Through the family album, self-portraiture, Faustine explores the inherited legacy of trauma, lineage, and history. Influenced by architecture and sculpture, she reconstructs a narrative of race, memory, and time that delves into stereotypes, folklore, and anthropology. Her images are meditative reflections of a history Americans have not come to terms with, challenging the duality of what is possible, both visible and invisible. Faustine was a 2016 Baxter Street Workspace resident and named the inaugural awardee of the Baxter Street Family Residency at the Stoneleaf Retreat this summer. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will now hand it over to Marina and Nona.
Hi everyone. Hi Marina, how are you?
Hello everyone.
So you're in Massachusetts right now, and I'm in hot New York City. And we both are art mamas that have a lot going on, and especially you. So I want you to, I just to be completely honest, I was not able to see your show, but you sent me installation pictures and video, and you talked a lot about it. We've talked a lot about your Fulbright scholarship to Greece and some of the work you were making there. And I didn't see it, but you were describing going to the refugee camps and different things like that. But tell me, how did you get to this moment or process all of these things into this body of work? Because it's a lot. It's like, it's bringing up, like, to me, it's like, it touches on this other transatlantic kind of passage with the immigration. It touches on definitely archaeology, migration, time, memory, loss. I mean, it's wide open. So talk to me about how you got to this point to formulate this work.
I think, the proposal was about the working with refugee when I went for Fulbright, and I kind of really didn't want to do it. Also, like to take a photographs of the refugee while me being the immigrant and refuge to United States. But I think the more I experience being there, um, I kind of have a question. What is how do I take the image without, and also what really is the most important thing I want to transfer. So I think I kind of start remembering 9/11 and the Islamophobia that happened. But I also, it's not really all of the people who are in refugee camp, by the way, are Islamic, but majority, I will say yes, with different religious beliefs, and but it is kind of under umbrella of. But they put as a one body. There is like a title of refugee, while they do have a different kind of beliefs, a little bit. There are much more different languages. I will not like they cannot communicate often with each other while they're placed in the same space. So the more I was thinking about, the more I was thinking like what is the more important and how do we, as a refugee and as immigrant coming to Western world or any actual land, imagining how do we connect to the past and to the future and how do we map our own existence in these territories. So based on the like majority of people there, but also like I think in African tradition also orally. So I was thinking about their oral tradition of passing history. I decided that I will be more interesting to record their songs that were circulating in their household.
Mhm.
So and I think that's how it started. I really feel blessed being there and them singing. It was also the moment when they were happy, of singing there. A lot of them were not thinking they would be able to sing in this kind of environment.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I think almost by the end of the year, there is this Louvre happened when
It's
Notre
what?
Dame de not Louvre, Notre Dame de Paris got burned. Notre Dame de Paris got burned out in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And the $6 billion overnight that flowed to the restoration of that archaeological or whatever the historical buildings. And I saw how during my stay there were people who drowned, the people who literally got frozen at the camps and not in the camps, like to death because they didn't have electricity or the enough of the roots. So I was thinking about what's more important, how Westerners are actually care more about archaeological sites and the art in general that comes from this country. They buy on museums own the collection of these refugees, um, historical heritage or whatever. It's arts, it's cultural heritage. Most of them are in the Western museums. While they permitted to the museums, they welcome, but the physical bodies of the refugees are not.
Right.
So I think that's how I kind of was thinking about the
Mhm.
project in general.
Right.
That like what is really is important. I mean, it's kind of comes from the angry point, but I try to nail it as much as possible, so it's not really obvious. So with the songs, I really would like them to be heard in the Western world, and they're also like they are for me in color of because it's a present moment of being and this human lives are like the people are alive. So I guess
Are,
that was
are the songs they were singing, are they songs from their homeland and their language, and are
yes.
they incorporated in the exhibition?
Yes, they are. So they are. There is a. So one thing that refugees they travel and or bring with them in contemporary world is the cell phones. And there is always this kind of a questions from a lot of people who look at that. Oh, this person has cell phone, so he's not that poor. But they really need to realize that the cell phone is the only physical object that refugee actually carry through the whole trip through different borders in order to get to where they are because
Wow.
it's connection also to their home.
Right. Otherwise, they're like
And
blind.
helping, yes, connection, but also help, like asking for help if they need it on the way from the family, because usually during this trip they do ask a lot of help from the home, like financial as well.
So one of the things that like struck me in the show is the life vest. And I mean, do you have a background in sculpture? How did you do that? How did you come up with that idea? I mean, we're talking about migrants, so on boats, you know, crossing the Mediterranean, or you know, so but still, just the way you crafted these life vests and the material, what is that coating them?
So everything is made in concrete, because concrete means like coming together, the like one body of all the particles come together, it have a weight. Also, it's very like the definition of the word, the etymology of the word means like one body. And
Concrete.
it's also, yes, so it's everything in this whole installation made of concrete, because I use specifically that material. Also, because of the definition, also the relationship from um, Middle East, whatever the Mesopotamia region, as well as Greece, they do produce, and they produce a lot of concrete materials. So that's one part. Also because they really the West, like I think the video, so the videos on the cell phones are showing the graveyard of the life jackets in Lesbos.
Mhm.
So it's near the Maldives. There is a huge graveyard of like you're looking all the way far, and it's all graveyard. There are all the life jackets that they put together for refugees who used to come. And so that's a video on the cell phones coming with the songs. Also, I was thinking about how, like, I want this life jackets to be very much heavy. So they kind of not going to help you. They're not going to save you. But also the question of where they got produced. What is the country that producing the life jackets? Like there is a relationship between West and the East, and how do we really saving you?
Right.
Um, so there is kind of like this tension, I guess. I want to create little tension between, like, I do find life jackets for me a little bit obvious, but there is also in the pieces that on the wall, which is actually seen from its layers are from all the sides. I embed the life jackets threads from the or textiles from the Lesbos from that actually graveyard. So they embedded, I don't know, in the, I don't
Hmm.
know if I should show it or not. So,
Yeah, you should show it because
okay.
it's quite like stunning.
One
And just even
second.
though, you know, looking at still images of an installation is quite different from actually being there in the um, gallery. Still, that piece really resonated to me, and it was so intricate. You know, I just wondered. I just, you know, I know that like not everybody does their own work. You know, like they may, you know, design it and then go to an artisan and tell them how they want it and supervise from that. But I just curious because I know that you have a toddler and you're a new mom, and you know, I did you craft these yourself?
Yes, but I also, as you know, we go to cafe, and the owner of the cafe gave me for 2 weeks his space for free. It's a good neighbors, you know.
So
So
you did all of that in there, and
yes,
the life jackets and the it's almost shaped like a boat, like the what they're hanging off of, right?
yes,
That
I
was what
kind
you
of
were
did this, yeah, symbolic wood bars.
for. Yeah.
But this is, I don't have installation shots, but I have like pieces on the wall. So they were a combination. So during the time I was also taking the molds. I made a molds. I'm not permitted in general to put any materials on archaeological sites, but it's illegal kind of. But I did. I made a mold in Lesbos and some other areas of the camps in Greece, which is in Persian, Egyptian, and I don't know if it's a Hebrew or I think it's a Hebrew, not Yiddish, but there is a like this parts of the Greece that has different cultures layer historically. So there is Byzantine and Christian. So I layer them on top of each other in concrete, and between them I put this. Life jackets, textiles that are collected in Lesbos. There is also, so they're like multiple layer on top of each other. They both sided. So I think in the images you will see both sided. In the gallery, they're just one side. And there is also embedded images. So they are like everything that is in an archive that passed in Greece, they're in concrete. So you don't see them as a color. So like, and they're almost like this, like images of like faded. Some of them you see better, some of them not. The one that is in color, the image was the textile over here. It is actually, I put in bits and pieces of refugees' bodies. It's like almost this reference to this museum archaeological sites of what they keep in their museums, you know, like kind of trying to so everything that is in color, for me, it's a present moment of being. It's actually what's happening now. So the life jackets of the refugees, the images of their body, they're still alive. Wow. They're still here. Everything in concrete is past. And it also shows like geographically what was the land centuries, you know, it's like who belong the land is and how do we claim our territories and, you know, mapping, geographical kind of mapping. Like yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I spent you know, a month in Greece when I was an undergrad, and I've always, it was the country that I always wanted to go to first because I was a great lover of archaeology, and I wanted to become an archaeologist. So when I saw what you did, it just spoke to me, and I recognized the language in right away. Um, but there's one piece, if you could show that of a young black man, and I understand what you're saying about, you know,
I think this one.
Yeah, about photographing refugees who are already so vulnerable, being exploited and exploiting them with the camera or film, you know. But I think the way you did this made me just go, you know, because it reminded me of Egyptian uh, coffins of the late dynasties, where some are in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where they're painted on faces of actual Egyptians who died, or Greek Egyptians, and from the Ptolemy period. And so this reminded me of like of a coffin. Speak to that.
I was looking to the Mesopotamian section of Metropolitan, and I was looking the way the portraiture was done in Mesopotamia, which is today is a region where the majority of these refugees are coming from. So when I was thinking about how do I show their bodies, I was looking at that technique and kind of, I want that effect of the past portraiture or past the way they were actually shown. Like if we're living the metropolitan section of Mesopotamia and like Egyptian, whatever it was, but you see this little tiny portraits, like square ones that, and I always kind of think about them. But yes, I did make like, I made them objects. In a lot of ways, like I try to objectify the way Western, like here, does it fit now to be their bodies finally be physically in the West, you know?
Wow. I mean, this.
I mean, it's a very heavy for me, and because I do have a personal relationship to each of them, and I follow. But it's just like, there is a lot of I guess it was a lot of things going on, and it's like, especially me being angry with Notre Dame de Paris and what's happening in the West and what the value of or devalue of human life compared to the value of the artifact.
Right. So you did spend quite a bit of time with them, and they did let you take their pictures, right?
Yes, I mean, we spent, I think through the year, I was going back and forward and I was meeting friends. Like now I'm invited to the wedding in Switzerland.
Oh.
So for one of the person that it was two sisters. So Sitari, for example, is just got married, but they're going to have a like big wedding. So it's like, yes, it's I don't really take photograph or feel anymore of people that I don't know. Even the case when we met, we did not know each other and I took a photograph of you. I think I'm barely ever doing this, only if it's like specific project for strangers, but
Yeah. So for those who don't know, me and Marina are neighbors, and the first time I met her, I was a new mother, and I had a small baby because my daughter Queen, she was not walking yet, and so she came up to me and asked me. I was sitting in front of a cafe, and she asked if she could take my picture, and I said yes because she was like so nice. And I think she did tell me that she was just starting as a student. And she found a way to get me that picture, even though she didn't know me or know where I lived or had never seen me before. She got me that picture, and I still have it. It's a beautiful black and white picture of my daughter. So, to see you starting out in photography 12 years ago and then come to this, it's just incredible. And do you have more of this style where you use their photos like this?
yes, I mean all of them use a little bit of bits and pieces. I think this is in gallery, this is the only one who have face. But I do have more pieces way bigger. It was just I kind of decided not to use for the.
Yeah. I mean,
And this is the back side, for example, of that piece that you don't see in a gallery. Like
Okay.
it's on because the way it's installed.
And so what's the back of this? What are those curvy lines? It reminds me of like animal's mane, lion or
So
something.
that's a head. It's of the ancient Greek sculpture. So this is a head of like a bull, but it's also the god. There's, I'm not like maybe Despo knows, but it's one of the gods of Greek mythology. So
And
they
so,
have this. So in general, everything that is in Greece is kind of a graveyard. Everything
yes.
that passed, like photograph is the death to representation.
I
But
mean, you dig in the ground and you come up with artifacts. I mean, like I traveled all over Greece from Athens to as far as Olympia, almost to Corinth, and I mean, the whole country is just an outdoor museum basically. So the fact, but what kind of surprises me or is that you were taking molds. Some people might gasp. Um, you did taking molds of actual artifacts, which in museums you're not allowed to touch anything, but here you are in Greece, like, oh, this 5,000-year-old piece, I'm gonna make a mold of it.
I mean,
So
I was trying to be very nice with them. So I got a very good mold that to make sure it get out of that marble or concrete that they were made. But it was a purple, so I was standing there pretending I'm archaeologist and working.
I know we find a way as artists to get things done, right? Like
Yeah.
like I believe like you shouldn't have to pay to take pictures or as a photographer or in certain places, I feel like for instance, like this weekend, we were, unbeknownst to me, we were in front of the National Reserve Bank of New York that holds the most gold in any one place in the world. And I should have had a clue that it was a high security place by all the cop cars on William Street. But, you know, no one's in the cop cars. So we just did our thing. And we were like in the middle of the street, you know, shooting in between cars coming by. And I just feel like, you know, my sister later, we were arguing about whether I would have got arrested on a Monday morning when things are going back to normal versus a Sunday. And the fact that, you know, we were standing out there without a permit to photograph. And I just like, you know, and people often ask me, oh, did you get permission? Did you get permission? And it's like, no, you know, why do I have to ask permission? Why do I have to pay the city to get a permit? You know what I mean? I just don't, I just feel artists suffer enough for their work. So like,
I think also it's the idea of being unauthorized. Like I remember your work on the you know, on the stairs of the court,
Tweet
I think.
Courthouse.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're going to ask all the time the permission, the work will not be done ever.
Exactly.
So I think we should do whatever is the possible. Like I was climbing, I think that time I was 8 months pregnant. I was climbing literally the fences, and it was some guy who was there, and he actually gave me a hand because otherwise I will be impossible for me to. But he was, you know, and then he showed me how I can exit that archaeological site. But I think, yeah, like you also work a lot with this idea of unauthorized spaces, you know.
Right. So that is incredible. And I wanted to ask you also about what I think people need to talk. Sometimes we feel pressure, particularly as artist mothers, not to talk about being a mother. But I have to ask you, how are you juggling it all? In particular, making such physical work, finding the time, the balance. The baby, a toddler, she's more active, walking to kind of talking, and you're having to deal with that. I saw you one day, and you were, I could tell you were tired.
I think like all of us, we're jugglers. Yes, it's a juggler in the circus. And also because of the materials that I work, the children are not permitted. Because of inhaler of the concrete, it's not really something that. So I'm kind of, I guess, running around. My child is very social because she stays with everyone, wherever is possible. Like you see the owner of the cafe babysit my child while I'm running to do things. So I kind of, I guess that's it is. But I do find a lot of spaces are very, and even like when you become a mother, and I think we have a Kiana here, she may say a lot about it as well as, you know, it's a lot of spaces are not welcoming you as a child, like as a residencies, or they're not made to accommodate you and your child.
Mhm. Right.
So,
And the ones that do are very competitive to get into. So I mean, there was one recently, a grant, and it's kind of popular. And I mean, I was sure I had a shot. It came back and said no, sorry. So you know, it's yeah, they're far and few in between, and you kind of have to, you know, have a lot of support to do this. And I was grateful to, you know, have my mother for so many years, my sister. I know you have your mother, but your mother is a little more active than my mother. Like my mother was home 24/7. Your mom be traveling and stuff. She be
yeah,
going places.
I think it's easier when my mom is not around, by the way. It's
Oh,
much
okay.
more easier for me because I can actually do something at home, otherwise not. But I do find there is like a problem of how we do hide the children at some point. Like you do take a lot of photographs with your daughter. And I'm kind of thinking how, like now, especially having a child, how does it change really, in a way people look at you and your work based on you having a child, as well as giving you opportunity knowing that you have a child, and how many artists actually do not put on social media that they do have, or try not to, or eliminate, you know. So like there is unknown fact.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, from my earliest work that I ever made, which was in undergrad, was about young mothers. And so it was just natural for me to talk about motherhood and babies and children. And then, amazingly, I had one of my own. And so what was the logical I just wanted to photograph that world and my world and share that. So I guess it was, but then there were times where, like, I wasn't photographing that my world, and I would go to like Coney Island, and I would have to take her with me and be photographing. But I found a way. You'll find a way to somehow make work that, well, you're making work that isn't about babies and motherhood, so you're already on the right path right there. But so you should have no problem going forward making whatever kind of work you want to make. But if you want to talk about that, I don't see why not. And I'm sure you'll find a unique way to do it. One thing I like about you is like you're unpredictable.
Yes, starting with photographs, ending up in concrete. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never, and just the way you took those photos, like I'm kind of literal a lot of times. So like I would have, perhaps tried to, make a relationship between the refugees and me and photograph them in that traditional kind of portrait way. But I love that you found a way to do that without literally showing their faces all the time, which also talks about kind of like what do you call it? It's kind of evasive, it's kind of exploitive, that's the word. And I like that you didn't, I mean, I love National Geographic, I love those photographers that do that documentary, but that's the challenge of being an artist and making art like what you do, is finding a way to create your own language to talk about these things. You could take the easy way out, pick up a camera and boom, boom, boom. But like finding a way to then, you know, pull it apart, make it layered, talk about that issue. I just love it. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
You're also brilliant in layering. So as we always said, it's like your work has a lot of angles to entrance.
Thank you. Thank you. So is there anything else you would like to tell us before we open it up for questions?
No, I think I'm open. I think it's a good.
So are you gonna take a little break this summer? What's your next project?
Um,
Or
I
have
don't know.
you can't
I'm constantly in a project. It's just some of the works are taking longer.
uh-huh.
Some projects take a year and I never finish.
Right.
So I think I want to explore a little bit more of the concrete, and like I have bigger pieces, so I want to kind of more work with that. I started making glass ones as well, because
Mm-hmm.
original the idea was concrete mixed with glass and other
Wow.
materials. So I made some parts now in glass. So I'm going to just, work with the concrete and glass the same way like molds
Yeah.
imprinted. So because of the connection of glass to the area of Mesopotamia as well, and the so I'm kind of interesting as a more materials. So I think that's what my kind of a next. But I also work on the videos of the that I took. So there are many. I mean, I have a lot of work. It's just I always don't like to finish things.
Yeah, and I'm always afraid not to finish things, so that's why I try to do that. But another thing I was thinking about you, and that there were some pieces you showed me when you first graduated from Chicago Institute, and they were again sculptural, but referring to this photographic history. And you seem to have found some kind of way to inspired by photography, but not literally photography, even though you love cameras, you have a bunch of cameras, you take pictures. So how did you come to using sculpture? Do you feel that you're a sculptor slash photographer, or do you not want to be boxed in at all?
I think I have nothing, like I love to take photographs and I take photographs all the time. It's just, I feel sometimes you have a project and the image is not enough. I feel this sometimes the materials want to come up. Like the project that I finished in Chicago, for example, the album that you're talking, that I started actually when we were studying an ICP board. I mapped the book during the Victor's class, which is that time my father died before I entered ICP board. And then I made all these archives into the dummy at the Victor's class, Victor Sierra. And I kind of, it was sitting with me, you know. And then I think when I went to Art Institute, I was chilling with ceramicists. And I had nothing, like there was a problem with accessing the photo equipment, whatever it is, which was for good, okay? I'll tell you, for the best. And I would start asking the questions like, you know, and thinking about materials in general. So then I found that a lot of like porcelain made of bones. So I found the China bone porcelain that is literally made of bones. And that was my kind of like, okay, I'm working with archive. I want to burn the archive. And album means albino. So when you burn, everything is white. So I started experimenting that time with Joseph. And it's just, I came up with this, like the way I was layering, like, so it's not super fragile, but it's a China bone porcelain in general. And I buried, I dip in my photographs into that porcelain and I put it in a kiln. So which is like when they burned, there was just white page, which is exactly what I was looking. But then I was thinking about archaeology. I always think about archaeology. And when you start lighting up like Carter did when he was discovering Tutankhamun, the pharaohs, he lit the light, and that's how he found the Tutankhamun grave. So I decided, what if happened if I turn off the light and see what is left, what traces. I'm interested, I think, in the traces, historical traces in general, in my kind of work, in erasure and traces and the way we construct the narratives. So then the images appear, but they are very almost dysfunctional, but also as dysfunctional as the photograph it is for the viewer who will see it 100 years later. Like we look up the archives today and we have nostalgia, but what do we know about the image? What do we know about that person? So I think the same way I'm doing in this project, making them in cement. There is a construction of the narrative that is really like I try to deconstruct, I think, and construct again in my own version without having any meaning. It's something like I don't have a gender.
Right.
But also archaeologists, when they give us this kind of historical concept of what it is historically, this archaeological sites, they made the narrative for us based on these bits and pieces.
Right.
What if I take, instead of you drawing me that picture, what if my mind will draw my own picture, your mind will draw your own, like you said, that remind you coffin of the Egyptian, you know, what is it, how you call it in English? The head.
The head?
Yeah, the head remind you the Egyptian coffin.
Egyptian coffin, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me it was like maybe a little bit, yeah, exactly. So, but everyone has this something else, you know? So some people will have, and the same way is like, I remember during the classes, we talk about how image, you have your own agenda about your picture or about the photograph you took. And the people will make completely different narrative about your work. It doesn't matter if it's a photograph or something else. So what's the difference then if I just deconstruct and construct and let it be?
Right.
Without having agenda of giving you like this is what it the way to look.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of being an artist to me is making the work. And because of as a woman of color, so often our narratives, our stories, our life have been taken from us and rescripted by someone else or retold by someone else. We don't. So when I put work out there, I want to be sure that it is how I say, but I've slowly given into the idea that it goes out in the world and it takes on a new interpretation, and people are going to do that. And sometimes I like to hear what other people say they're seeing or feeling in the photographs that I didn't even imagine.
But there is another thing that I see like now, and I was talking to a friend of mine who I'm visiting, that coming from Uzbekistan, which is Asia, now we have Western people assigned to write historical books about our contemporary art, who never live in the Central Asia, who because the government of these countries prefer to hire someone from the West, hypothetical scholars, to write the book about us. So that's the same thing that happened with your, people, that someone in a Western colonization, that's a call Western colonization happening even today. That's what I'm trying to show in my work a lot. It's not just about people of color. It's literally what's happening today all over. Someone else is writing the history for us. And then we are getting this fragmented history that is horrible in a lot of ways, and it's like mutated to some kind of a version of the Western colonial, you know it's propaganda almost. And they choose to who they want to eliminate and who not, also having no knowledge.
Right.
No, not only language, but like there is a lot of layers. They didn't even live through that time. While we do still have a people who lived through that time, who actually can write the narrative, at least in a better version. There is no, like, how we talk about history, there is a personal narrative and there is a social narrative, or like the bigger body. And it's all like, in some sense, I believe it's a fraud, all of the versions for me, in my personal. But at least when someone from that region will decide to write and try to be kind of as much honest possible in his own collection, I think it's better than someone who is much more outsider, of the region. Like, am I Uzbek artist? No, because I don't live there for 20 years, as well as I don't have that identity or cultural identity, because there is different identities of cultures live there. I'm just a human being, but am I going to be better? I think I will be better than this Westerner writing, so even then. So I kind of started, I think that's my new kind of interest of thinking the way, like who's writing the history.
Yeah.
That's how colonial happens.
It's part of a movement. I mean, I'm glad, you're sharing this because, African Americans and Caribbean people and, the diaspora, we're all thinking and talking about it and how we create, correct this narrative that was thrust over us. And I'm glad to hear that in other parts of the world, or people who come from other parts of the world, are also thinking about that. Who are not typical Western. They're also thinking about that.
But also, even if we look about Western, like Greek history, the first king of Greece was Bavarian. Mm-hmm. The history was erased. After Ottoman, there was a Bavarian king and queen who was ruling that country. Right. So if we look up the way even they were colonized by the West to propaganda democracy, because they like the idea of democracy. We build the city upon the hill. Here is Acropolis standing, and we need it. We need that land to propagate this over to new world. You know, so it's a kind of a very interesting, like how even the Western world was constructed by the bourgeois. Because let's just say it's a really class structure. We need to
Right.
control people who may make another next French Revolution.
Yeah, it's a caste system, and there's a new book that came out of 6 months ago that breaks down literally the caste system of America. But let's open it up to discussion and questions for you before we get too late. Anybody have questions? Please put them in the chat. And ask Marina some questions. Go see her show before it closes. Let's see what
For Nona.
Oh yeah, thank you. Please. Okay, so yeah, so we'll give you a second to you can also ask them, verbally, if you have any.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself and
Yes,
just chime in with any questions.
Yes, unmute yourselves first. And then ask Marina any questions you have. At least one. Or you can ask me. I don't know. You can ask me one too.
I have a question. I'm curious to know, since both of you were workspace residents at Baxter Street, how do you see that experience kind of influencing your work as an artist? Looking back a couple of years from when Nona, you did it, to currently Marina. Like, I know that it's very different for Marina because of COVID, and it was like a different kind of moment in time. But I am really curious to know, given the two experiences, have you ever talked about, what you got from that and where it kind of jump started into another project, or how you kind of look at other residencies or just moving forward with your work?
Well, since I'm the senior here, I'll just say, well, first, I'm glad to see like you giving a platform, because when I had the show, but you give a show and a Zoom talk now. So that's really nice. I was like, I didn't get that when I was there, but I don't think they had Zoom then in 2016. They had Skype, but so how did I ever see? When I joined the work program, I'll just say what I got out of it. Like when I joined, when I was selected to do the work residency, I was at this point where I really needed the funds. And I literally could not go to my sites to photograph what I wanted. And when I did, the work that I made, the Brooklyn Museum ended up buying it. And just to know that, all that effort was put into me and what came out, and what if I hadn't had the residency. So I was at this crucial point where I needed the support. I was really kind of down and stuff. And so just having the facility, I was able to go and use the studios at ICP, and I was able to do this incredible show, and all the funds that was given. I think it's one of the most generous residencies I've had, besides Black Rock in Africa. It was the most generous. And just, you didn't put any restraints on that, I was able to pay some people that I needed to pay, and so I'm just so grateful. And just the exposure, like I know people overuse that word, but the show, we got tons of press, and even a year later, people wrote about that show that I had there. So it took my career, for lack of a better word, or my practice to another level. And I'm just grateful that, you know, we set this kind of bar now for where it's taken off and people are looking, you know, at what is being produced at Baxter Street. So what about you, Marina?
As you said, it's a very nice to have actually the residency that help you to pay material cost. It's really like to produce the work.
Yeah.
So I didn't have really experience with ICP, but actually I guess at the end I didn't need it because as you can see, it's really
Right,
was
you didn't need it.
non-printed. Yeah, I did think for a while to do some work but with a printed media, but it's okay. Like I'm glad whatever is happened.
Right.
But I will say it's fantastic to have someone pay for production. I cannot talk about post whatever because I don't have yet that experience. The show is still on. Um, but it's yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Fulbright was also for me great, you know. But I do really I think my goal with this whole residency project is that I do want people to see what's happening. I don't want them to just open the New York Times, you know, and see next chapter and move on. You know, I really want the my friend's body, the refugee's body, being present in the West, and I'm very appreciative too that they voices are actually present. That whatever who comes can hear the voices. And this is the voices of people who are still alive and asking. Or they singing the song to connect to the future and to connect to the past. So that's my goal. So
Right.
I think maybe I don't know what I don't really have so much like goals, I guess. And I just want to. I'm interested in the present moment, and I'm grateful that the Baxter actually really show the work. And I think I talked to the Jill and Alex for a while. It's like it's easier maybe for me to show some other project because that one like literally produced before like cooked in a month. But
So we have a question. Sorry to cut you off, but we have a question from Wendy Vogel. Hi, Wendy. She says, thank you. She enjoyed the conversation, but she's curious to hear more about the sculptures with multiple languages embedded in them. It almost makes me think of a Rosetta Stone. And can you say more about the language in these works? Is translation an important aspect of this project for you or in your practice overall?
So thank you, Wendy. It's actually a very good question.
Yeah.
I refuse to translate. I refuse to use English as a colonial language. And I think I actually literally refuse to translate. With the songs or with the sculpture pieces, I made a decision not to. Coming like one of my first languages is Uzbek. And being unable to speak the language after 9/11 because of the way people will perceive me, and trying to hide on this kind of Western Western look. But it's, yeah, I think I came to the time now that I literally refuse to translate. So the way the work was made, it's just literally for me to make this palimpsest of different languages come together. It's the same way also it's transferred to the way the land is layered there. So you go from one layer of archaeological site to another, you dig one tail, and the more deeper you dig in, the more discover of different civilization you find. So that's the same way I did my work, and my pieces are very much palimpsests. There is like 10, 12, 13 layers, depends on the pieces of different languages. I guess that's an answer, or maybe, I don't know.
Thank you. Any other questions or things you would like to know before we end our discussion? Okay. Well, we'd like to thank Baxter Street, Marina and I, as
Thank
always,
you.
one of our favorite organizations that really truly, for me, gives to artists and help artists, especially New York, photographers and photographic based artists. So I'm really thankful.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Nona and Baxter, for having me and everyone who came to see the talk. Thank you so much for being here and to see if you saw the work, it's great. That was my goal. Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Marina and Nona, for giving us such an engaging conversation and allowing us to go deeper into both your work and your relationship. I really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you everyone for joining us. And please come by Baxter Street if you're in the area. We would love to walk you through Marina's show. It's really quite exquisite and definitely a kind of immersive experience. So it's really great if you guys can come by and you can meet Alex and myself. And we're there Tuesday through Saturday, noon to 6. So please come and we would love to see you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you everyone for joining us.